close that window up.
The second house is ready and
So off your bottom, that helps.
But no.
I think you
Plus, isn't that we just pass around though.
Yeah, that's what's going to end up happening.
So nice.
Oh yeah, folks, note to even during prep, no whispering. If you're on the internet, which I'm sure most of you are going to do anyway, just message each other. Okay. Yeah, laughing during that. Pass notes. Harken back to the third grade.
Just for every sheet.
Hey, we're getting ready to start.
Can you close the door, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
From drone strikes against brown bodies in the Middle East to the slaughter of black youth in the streets of Chicago, the military industrial complex controls our every move and thought that symbolic background shapes our epistemology and violence becomes normalized. Quiroz 16. Gun violence produced a culture so violence used every time routine society relies on violence. Culture violence cannot be abstracted from business. Violence drives the arms industry and a militaristic policy in states to enforce domestic terrorism against black youth. Sharp light competition replaces solidarity, self-interest with society, consumer predominance of a relatively unchecked gun culture is evident in the power of the gun lobby. Imperial policies match violence, this chain of repression which mutually feed each other. Civil society is generating into a military organization. Police use social power to criminalize behavior across outside of insecurity by criminalizing individuals and advanced political sovereignty has been replaced by economic sovereignty. Lobbying carried out by the NRA. Militarization represents a social logic that is constituent values and public values and the critical citizenship as a result of any public intellectuals. Militarism seen in every institution, including schools, people like their disposal because they offend financially. Militarism provides support for policies that protect those Americans not being only engaged in violence terror and attained by this is mimicked in foreign policy, torture, and drones. Gun culture offers false forms of security. One of which Americans are so they can protect themselves against adversaries whipped up by politicians. Gun rights provide discourse for ignoring harsh local corporate state or monarchs do not go far enough. Gun stuff symbolic as well as actual power, violent fantasies, proliferate refusal to enact gun control, symptomatic of the death of democracy, not so heated politics, works in one of the points of life's effect in militarized culture, found by financially weird for a country, approximately 300 million pounds to the third, of which your handgun G's gun is made to kill as quickly and effectively as possible, and gun culture replicates patriarchal nationalism and neoliberalism. Men get guns to protect their families from those marked as criminal. Garment 14. Owning guns produce a national identity that souls individuals and become labeled American subjects who have been used to carry out brutal assimilation, and where the emphasis of being a subject sets a guide and ideal for many men in the community. Nothing is more suited to be influenced by power than individuals in historical or capacities of historical militaristic colonials and capitalism, patriarchal nationals who create individuals who are likely to unknowingly conform to the comments that David they need guns to protect themselves from Indians who attack them. It's not like Canadians were all living peacefully. The guns were in the tapestry of the USA across the veteran settler societies reinforced white supremacy, security formations who were defined by opposite regulatory measures that allow certain men to attain hegemonic status and weight differences constructed to lead to oppressive effects, and gun rights fuel suspicion of the collective. They animize individuals and amplify fear and prejudice. Deborah Bander, 15. There is perhaps no individuals in worshiping the government's NRA argues against the collective. Individuals can act impulsively in private arguments according to prejudices. Arms are sense suspicion of the collective gun suffers is very from the community causes others to treat them with fear. The gun movement puts an individual against society. Collectives a suspect. Handgun bans are key. Americans view them as a quintessential weapon. The one AC is to stand against a culture of violence. Volok 9. The court's explanation why the handgun ban is not constitutional. Inquiry how lawbreakers regular arms ever people consider the handgun the quintessential self-defense weapon. Handguns are the most popular weapon chosen for self-defense, and the 1AC ruptures the mindset of guns as necessary for self-defense. People are no longer constantly reminded of guns as a means of solving their problems. Donahue 15. The government points back with the recent conversation the word race will closure 1 per 100,000 of brave members to fight a range of Australian gun interest in country experience a cultural shift. Guns are no longer real world self-defense, self-spreading. Individuals are now reminding guns to reach to the address that electric differences. Guns cause police militarization. Deborah Bander 15. Guns find sex police started to react to police and past police justify trial for treatment court by saying the latter become violent. Militarized police are more likely to create and diffuse competition pressing guns. That's a perfect excuse for police to crack down. Thus the plan the state governments of the United States on demand private ownership of handguns. Framing. The resolution asks the question of desirability of the ballot should be yes, and the question of desirability of the plan link should interact with the consequences of the plan. Next should defend a competitive post-fiat policy option. Status quo discourse on gun control is embarrassing. Policy discussion is necessary to create advocacy to resolve material problems. McClurg 92. Fallacies and common discussion social issue gun controls and premier example opinions are almost always specially held dimensional composition. We eventually ensures the disagree in the most disagreeable manner. Discourse is played by bad rhetoric. The debate seldom rose about trivial hyperbole discussions taken in name calling and non sequitur verbs. We refer to reform debate. We cannot hope to approach the law in any rational way. Gun control advocates like to believe youth, only those who oppose gun control guilty of second rhetoric of scrutiny reveals this false importance of dissecting gun control. What says beyond gun control, understanding rhetoric is a process every student should care about. Advocates cannot be completely effective unless they master the tools of advocacy and concrete structures, or concrete reality structures existence. Black people have reality to confront. They cannot make to do with philosophizing of the alternative given the reality of everyday existence. Code 4. The world as earthly exists where human beings or slave or laws are passing against the oppressed, where the oppressed fight back the world's where white and black persons live, such that the latter striving for a little more room to believe in before doing everything possible to destroy black reality. The world's not a metaphysical entity or ontological problem as some philosophers would have us believe. It is very concrete. It is fighting rats and being kicked around by the police. White persons degrading rules are the underprivileged, and embodied politics are a necessary way to articulate power relations. Refusal of phenomenology replicates a view from nowhere. Yancey 8. In philosophy, the only thing that exposes a weak argument, fallacy, and pure reasoning. The embodied self is deemed irrelevant to theory and one search for truth. The phenomenological return to the black body and satiation to wealth out of complex social and historical indices of voice, effort of self-construction. Acts of self-construction are myths predicated upon maintaining white power. Mythification is the replacement of history with good ideology, white elevation, black emotion, and particularism is good. Root cause claims focus on overarching structures, ignore application of material injustice. Pathos 16. Pragmatism which should be distinguished from theories who started with seems injustice and large systems philosophical critique being accomplished under critique modernity. Pragmatism is not that the importance of power structures history we see present episode on the way to past practices where it takes treating this particular situation not as a global social pathology concepts of white supremacy and colonialism rituals to ameliorate particular injustice. The forces that cause the sustained domination of others in single hostile expenditure principles falsifiable no revision and concrete change is necessary. Pre or postmodern critique results in more material violence doesn't do anything. Lane 1 without concrete action for change and postmodernism distant voices remain disconnected. The critical rush off the immediate cries of those who they know are burning in the hells of exploitation but have few strategies to deal with them. Postmodernism recycle the same sovereign outcomes, seeing realism discourse divorce from practice analysis from policy and theory from public self and critique became romanticized. Postmodernism and it sounds like those are the greatest victims of the West conceit and metaphysical theorizing creates ivory tower activism. Shats 12. Any hesitancy does not excuse an action. Hegemonic forces already assume control favor people connecting things like volume more we wouldn't get from merely taking back the theorizing doesn't give grave injustice. The gains that activists are making we cannot fully escape the master style. We ought to act even if we make a cooperative can we still look at the government now allows us to codify strategic points of resistance and influencing other people's argument that the world tax is not the same as the biopower state matching to demonstrate how we are all interconnected and best method of engagement takes particular aspects of the system and re-articulates some. Move 13. Critique cannot consist in any larger withdrawal of engagement. The disarticulate existing discourse of re-articulation is critical. Otherwise, we leave open the door for re-articulation by not progressive force of the strategy of excess supposes multitude would be able to rule itself and antagonism disappear in order to make room for radical negativity. Less for negativity.
Where is that at?
Yeah, it's a link.
Okay, ready? Oh, that's not correct. Okay, so your Pappas evidence indicates that root cause claims are bad. It seems to me the affirmative makes a root cause claim about the way the cultures of gun violence function. How is there a distinction between this and any potential root cause presented by the negative?
I mean, we say that gun culture is the root cause of violence that is caused by gun culture, which seems to make sense. Our argument is like gun culture causes gun violence.
I know what you're arguing about gun violence. My question is, how does it dodge a root cause claim?
We will not make a root cause claim that gun culture structures and creates all other forms of oppression, which is what our Pappas evidence indicates.
Then your Ling evidence indicates that postmodern theorizing doesn't do anything. Why?
I mean, I think our evidence about how that has consistently resulted in critique that still allows material conditions of violence to continue is pretty good. It says that they brush off immediate cries of people that are, quote, burning in the hells of exploitation, and they just allow material violence to continue while they criticize more abstract concepts without...
Okay, what counts as metaphysical theorizing in the context of your Schatz evidence?
What do you mean, what counts as metaphysical?
What is a metaphysical theorizing?
I mean, I think theorizing about things like ontology and epistemology that without making direct applications to how that materially impacts.
Okay, what does it mean to make a direct application to how it materially impacts lives?
If you can explain the way that the alternative, is what I assume it would be, would resolve the material violence that occurs in the world of the AF, that would the instance of that. All of our 1AC evidence indicates that like concrete action is a good way to do that.
Okay. Now, what is culture?
What do you mean, what is culture? We say that that is the overarching structures that have produced beliefs that like a society has.
Okay, and how do we change culture?
The 1AC Donahue evidence indicates that when in the context of the 1AC, we don't make a claim about changing culture at large. In the context of the 1AC, our Donahue evidence indicates that because people recognized that handguns were no longer necessary because they didn't have them anymore and they still did okay, we shifted away from a culture of self-defense, which our dominant evidence indicates is like historically settler, colonial, and anti-black.
Okay, so your move evidence indicates that we need to take specific stuff that happens now and then re-articulate them. Does she indicate a particular kind of re-articulation?
Not sure what that means, especially absent in the context of some alternative.
No, I'm saying, does the card itself advocate like a particular kind of like redefinition?
No.
So it just says redefinitions are good, but it doesn't outline what kind of redefinitions are good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Then, what is the warrant in your first piece of Giroux evidence? It seems to be me making an empirical claim about the way things have happened. It doesn't seem to have a normative claim about why that's how things are going to happen in the future.
I mean, I think that our past experiences are a decent basis for how the future will continue to occur. I also think arguments about how, just the logical, causal-based arguments in this evidence that say that gun culture is fueled because individuals are self-interested, which drives them to do things like create profit, which results in scapegoating, and the politics of disposability is indicated by that evidence. It's pretty good.
Sorry, bro. Pretty nice. Oh, it's on the flash. It's called Octave. Should be no surprises here.
I'm sure.
Got it?
Yep. Oh, let me.
Order is one-off case.
Where are we starting the case?
Probably an overview. I'd flow straight down their offense.
It's fair. Hey, you should probably fix that leg because it's full.
He's gonna fall.
It's not like that. No, the other one. No.
Which
No.
one?
Right
This
there.
one? This one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Then can I
It's
use
a little
yours?
longer.
Yeah, okay. My stand's screwed, so I'm just gonna use Bennett's.
What's the order again?
One off, and then case with you probably flow the offense, the case overview, case arguments straight down on the offense level, and there's gonna be a bit more of an interaction on the framework level.
Okay.
Sorry. Danny, are you still flashing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just taking this one. Oh, yeah, I guess
Based on
I'll
my
do it.
IR.
That's my IR.
Alright. Everybody ready?
Sir.
Cool. Welcome again to the realm of the queer suicide bomber. No matter how liberal you think you are, there's always a deviant you want to ban. The thesis of the negative that print is the ballistic weapon, a handgun, a affirmative attempt to ban deviants, ban queerness and danger. Instead, we embrace the queer ballistic body and focus on embodied experience and moral discourse. We see liberal individuals when opposed to form otherwise fully expressing the expression. Exists primarily external to self within broader culture, which our position as speakers is that simple conduits of the larger everything field of sound, language, and affect with Sumio too. There's an impersonal expression of agency whose processes take processes speakers or the individual body, not even a particular institution, using flux expressions of broad potential for what it may become a scattered or over what will capture the potential subject. The objects that are all conscious of which movement in the expression streams, so expression adopts them for the ongoing self-redemption of moral imperative position. Speaker is easily from personal experience of the expression of the body is not audible, maybe domesticatable, only secondarily language. Goes for a second party, third party, neither of whom expressions always remove, pneumatically make responsibility, even as expressing settles is already extended to a next unknown destination. The expression is not dependent on generally moral assigning responsibility to an ethics, opposed morality, question of how one contributes to the expression expressed in the world, and ethic endeavor to ally oneself for change for ethics emerges, and liberal subject formation is predicated in the imperative of holy peaceful order, for that is enacted by the erasure of political difference, for unending war, on the basis of justifying particular modes of life is normal. Evans 10. Liberals is practiced to be continuous recourse of war. Liberal peace predicating the elimination of political difference. War peace command the more wars to collective chief. Liberal war becomes profoundly shape of war. The project of removing war becomes the lethal enemy process found between devotees of life itself. Liberalism gains its mastery by Jose Colby ambitious by political imperative for the unification of the species. Political war have always been allowing forms of life, politics, and continuation of war by other means. Destiny, humanity's breach of the necessity, humanity's political strategy becomes dangerous. A word from within liberal imaginary violence sanctioned against the doing what is necessary, or the enemies of humanity doing what is necessary out of global speech of necessity requires that life that only commits violence can think out of commitment to political difference by political life. So commitment to supremacy, race, and whole power, and it's how to define the norm against those who deviate from that norm to dangerous others. The existing population are mobilized for the purpose of wholesale slaughter through the discourse of practice of qualification. The one is capable of introducing a break in life that earns powers and trouble between one live and one must die. Political acts become more utilitarian and constantly redefining the threshold of life, which distinguishes separates it from the inside from the outside. The political, the biopolitical racial imperative is opposed to the most reform the category of failure to address unnecessary violence and continues to be an essential figure in the liberal encounter. Vote negative to affirm the queer suicide bomber. The disciplinary enforcement of stabilized liberal identity necessitates a strategy reflecting upon that which blurs the categories of identification. The terrorist queer, the suicide terrorist resonates as a figure of anti-normativity, which moves understanding from rationality to irrational intensity of life and obliterates the being of the human subject in favor of queer becoming. 407. Why the suicide bombing cannot be talked about without being condemned? By desires here to suspend this by analysis, representation with the reading of matter and pondering the modalities of the terrorist body machine together, assembles organic and inorganic, seeing that obliterates the dialectic self-annihilation, acts of self-preservation, and giving of life to the future political sources, emanating from the violent conditions of life and possibility of this body, reinforce reconciliation, the opposite of class, a habitation of contradictions, as soon to be detonated weapon forms part of the body is transformed to a weapon, death to become fused to one body, it becomes a ballistic body, one penetrative energy sense, charged with metal and torn flesh, swimming off into the ether, suicide resistance, of describe the body with no other means to get through its sides are forever shifting, unable to satisfactorily delineate between queer and intellectual destructions of the queer side of the suicide bomber, and our displacement of subjectivity enables the creation of space of queerness. They allow inhuman force to come together in a cathartic gathering. 410. Conviviality may complicate how subjects are positioned, underscoring more fluid relations. Conviviality foregrounds race, gender, and sexuality events rather than identities or entities or attributes. They turn to affect matters because affect makes identity possible, yet impossible. Conviviality which relating to marriage vested to the ability to live with conviviality is not merely called as universal nor individuated. It's rather futurity comes through open materiality. Not becoming with conviviality, ethical orientation, bodies that come together to space vulnerabilities. The encounters are rarely comfortable, merged rather tell forms of events that could unravel themselves with the political transformations of body. Conviviality is open to its own dissolution, self-annihilation. The challenge is how to craft convivial practice that not humanity or investment in form of content and its outcome. And the role of the ballot is to vote for who best methodologically engages in unintelligibility. The drive to make all things encodable and understandable destroys difference by the overproliferation of meaning, metaphor, and unintelligibility. It's used in encodability through both exposing itself and remaining ambiguous. Fernando 10. When poetry exposes itself with positive relationality, maintaining ambiguity, the possibility of metaphors disappearing due to the violence of permanency of way, and things like everything else, one can no longer distinguish between any longer. Is this result that the distinction into one another into meaningless is the metaphor that doesn't allow the name to sink into one another, doesn't allow names to equate with one another, prevents for disappearing. The suicide bomber is one that reminds us of the impossibility of determining the impossibility of knowing what she is. One must be willing to consider this possible and never resting finality. Now, case. Violence of the queer body tends to push the queer out of time, rendering queerness inherently dead. That's irrational, unexplainable by rational understandings. We must explode our understanding of the body to understand queerness. Stanley 11 overkill is excessive violence that puts the body beyond death. The heart just stops pushing. The killing is not finished death. The aim is not the end of specific life, but all queer life utility gives way to the pleasure of the other others' mortality. The task of any that which must not go beyond the number of times of life and death. If death after the first few stabs, what did the remaining 51 signify overkill? Names technology to do away with what's already gone. Queers are specters whose threat is unimaginable, whose force absolutely murder will push backwards at a time them into that which becomes before the human resides in space of life and rights. The queer inhabits the zones of death overkill, constitutes liberal democracy, the material semiotics overkill. The shall be read as only individual pathologies, just acts and died social words with their ambassadors. Now, go down on the case flow. We'll make a couple more arguments here. On the sake of the debate, first we offer an alternative. Even if the state is inevitable or deviancy allows, together as in great space, that is our conviviality evidence, which means that same inevitable claims do not take out the entire critique. The second argument we'll make is that queer violence is irrational. It turns all of your policymaking arguments to indicate that policymaking in bite-sized pieces is probably not sufficient to be able to understand queerness. That's our Stanley evidence. Third is that the state is not foreclosed. Redefining in new ways is what the alternative does. It means that we can make a form of statehood. It just don't know what it looks like. The kind of ambiguity of what the negative queer state could look like is exactly the argument that we make is good and probably more effective strategy. Fourth is micro-political action-based assemblages or net better or arguments that ultimately we are fluid structures that connect to a larger process of the world. That is true, then that means we have a micro-level interaction. Macro-level interactions enforce the kind of encodability that Fernando evidence indicates bad because they try to make everything to bite-sized pieces and they cut corners. It is exactly the kind of view that policymakers do not know every situation, and they never will, which means that we should probably embrace the micro-political action. Now, on the abstraction debate, one, there's an impact to abstraction. Abstraction is necessary to understand violence. These are models. You play catch-up, but we stand it from the start. Our argument is that we're necessary to be able to understand the violence that happens within the world that is irrational. Even your Jerome evidence indicates that there is an irrational nature of culture of gun violence. Second, there's no link. We control unique question. It's not the world, it's the world that is abstract, not us. We're just descriptive of the way the world functions for queerness. Third is the strategic abstraction. Our methodology is good, specifically in this case. You should not isolate generalities, but instead the specific methodology is negative. He needs to prove a reason why the queer suicide bombers in particular bad offense. Now, let's go, just more on the case debate. Our evidence recalls the entirety of the militarism debate, so London extended by saying that it's completely conceded first. There's a homo-nationalism descent to the entirety of his militarist market. The attempt to attack the state, engagement through state and codes of queer body. This is the top of the affirmative par excellence. The idea that no matter how liberal you are, there's always someone you're going to exclude. That means a place of queerness that is open to all kinds of deviancy is probably net better. Now let's go to the framing issues. First, the balance with the evaluation of the plan. One, evaluate the debate more holistically. Keep clash and focus on the entirety of the plan. Held counterplan critique evaluation because it's just a question whether or not the affirm is a good idea, which means you can bring over risk of offense. We think that you should evaluate the alternative by the affirm, like alternative versus the aff. Competing world. 2, we meet our link to the concept of your advocacy statement. We make the 1AR proof good reason why we violate any of our arguments or why the negative is uniquely unfair. Now in the McCord argument, he says super gun control stuff right now is really bad, but our conviviality argument is defense against any of your materiality arguments, and also this argument does not apply to the negative. You can talk about gun control all you want. We think that the negatives are a burden for joiners only to contest the affirmative, which is probably better for negative ground and strategy, especially when there's like new cards in the affirmative. The TOC now our conviviality argument is again, as I said above, defense against all of our materiality arguments because it indicates there is a risk of materiality in the affirmative. He says concrete structures are resistance. We cannot do with philosophy. One, we agree the earth is grounded. We disagree with the methodology bad for black. Our poor alternative is specific to the idea of human bodies, which means that, for example, individual brown bodies in the Middle East, as you talk about the top of your afro, are probably already encoded as terrorists, which means that we are a good methodology. That second philosophy is actualizable. Even people like Curry are philosophers. We are living as political, which means that we probably do all your arguments now on the rest of the leave from nowhere debate. Our arguments are good in the context of the state form. Generic claims are necessary to be able to actually actualize policies. We think that the convivial gathering that just understands the words assemblage is probably better than very specific claims that identify the split into individual pieces. We think that micropolitical action that comes together is probably best. Now, using medical theorizing, one, we can definitely examine the world while still actualizing it. That's all of our conviviality arguments. Using the methodology, take specific stuff from articulating. This is the thesis of the negative, or arguments that ultimately take things that have been said before, like the affirmative idea of guns, and we make them deviant.
Everybody good?
1 second.
You did not read the BFO card.
Yeah, didn't read BFO or Drake.
Cool. Everybody good? Probably silly question, status of the all.
Unconditional.
What does queer suicide bomber mean?
The queer suicide bomber is a Quiroz methodological analysis of the way suicide bombing and our interactions with the world can be rendered clear.
Okay, what does it mean to be queer?
In the context of our evidence, it's the idea of being a deviant force.
Okay, so the queer suicide bomber is like an embracing of or an engagement with this like queer or deviant force, right?
Yeah.
Okay, who is the agent of the alternative? Who does the queer suicide bombing? Or metaphorically, I guess.
Our argument is that individuals who are labeled deviant have the potential to be queer suicide bombers.
Okay, so for example, like black people are labeled deviant, they can be queer suicide bombers.
We think that could be a productive methodology.
Okay,
Yes.
how could Trayvon Martin have been a queer suicide bomber?
Yeah, so our argument obviously is a methodological analysis. I think if you take out specific situations, it might sound absurd, but we think in terms...
Okay, wait. Next question then. Once you take it to specific situations, it becomes absurd.
No, our argument is that it's a methodological analysis of the way the world works, and we think that this is a good holistic understanding. Obviously,
right. So
Trayvon Martin, when he was being chased by Zimmerman, could not have been the actualized queer suicide bomber. We think there is methodologies that can be done to do that.
Okay, wait, so what do those look like? If it doesn't apply in specific instances...
Yeah, our conviviality argument makes a good thing about that.
Actually, question, what does that word mean?
Conviviality is like a coming togetherness and like coalescing together through like deviancy.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's a good idea of what the alternative looks like.
I'm still confused about how that resolves things like our
Trayvon
Martin
question. So I'm going on to that. So the entire, for example, Shanika Shakur wrote a book called The Monster, and he was about his autobiography of being in prison, how the Crips imagined themselves as basically weapons against the police state of the United States. And we think that that is a kind of example of conviviality, the embracing of deviancy that is able to be mobilizing. Obviously, our argument is not that queer suicide bombing is necessarily a specific person, but instead a process.
Cool. The Massamy evidence, where does it say that embodied experience focus of the one I see actually causes liberal individualism? Like, I just don't see those words in this card.
The card discusses what happens when we impose form upon expression. It might not say the words liberal individualism. Okay, so the argument is that ultimately expression and culture and things like that are not something we can morph like avatars, like Airbender. Instead, they're things that they're constantly bouncing off of us and kind of moving through us.
Okay.
which means we can't control them.
Alright, so how does the queer suicide bomber account for overarching structures of things like anti-blackness that seem to, like, impose...
Yeah, so we critique the way in which we currently understand those structures and problematize the fact that those structures even exist.
Right, I understand that you problematize that those structures exist, but how does individual affirmation change overarching
we think
structures?
conviviality is basically a like the conviviality argument again answers this.
Okay.
Is that we carve a space out of the current form and enable it to be repurposed, which is why we need your move evidence.
Uh, 408. Flashing.
Yep. What's the order?
The advantage page of the case. The only thing I have flowed on that is the overkill argument, the framework page, the critique.
Advantage framework, then what?
Okay.
Are there any new cards in this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one you see. You don't have that.
Mirroring debate, just read it back.
I don't think I could read that fast.
We're starting with this overview.
What's happening?
Alright. Are you still flashing?
Yes.
Alright.
Weather's pretty nice. Weather's pretty nice.
I'm not sure how to respond to that. It's not raining anymore.
It looks like bright and happy out there and cold and dark and miserable.
Don't worry, it'll switch in 2 hours. This is Kentucky during that.
True. Alright. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Gun violence disproportionately occurs to black people. The culture of violence spread of guns results in police militarization of blocks disposability marks. Black people as criminal only. Handgun ban, shadow status quo, mindset of anti-black self-defense, and demilitarize the police. Additionally, guns are rooted in the mindset of a universal level subject that constructs who is more good or bad by overarching structures, which links to the critique. You say, the critique, that's all the one I see advantage evidence. You say, overkill. 1, you concede our changeable solves your argument, which is Donahue 15, which means that we will still resolve some changeable conditions of oppression. So if we win our framework arguments, it doesn't matter. Second, it assumes that you win your framework arguments or any of your arguments on the critique page about how you would resolve that now. The framework debate starting on the state good bad stuff, gun control policy debates are key to advocacy kills, which ensures the direction of all their impacts. Policy deficit to the obvious. They don't access our advocacy framework impacts, and even a policy isn't ultimately valuable, which is all the arguments they make. It's still a useful heuristic to learn about solving problems in the real world, which is arbicular evidence, and the one I see common evidence and impacts our framework argument in the context of gun control. And at worst, we get to weigh the case. You say that micro-political action is better, but our argument is just that we should still learn about the states of gun or advocacy about how to criticize those structures better in the real world. You say that abstraction is good, however, prefer materialism. First, our purpose evidence is greater on this issue. A point, we have an epistemic claim that moral investigations start with response to practical material problems instead of analysis of overarching structures. Like liberalism must be framed around resolving those material impacts, otherwise we wouldn't care about the structures in the first place. B point, the K doesn't have an external impact. Vague root cause of violence claims do not matter because they are not reverse causal. C point, the world is concrete, not some metaphysical problem. The problem isn't just unintelligibility. It's being kicked around the but at least his answer to the Trayvon question CX was, for lack of better words, embarrassing. There's nothing that the queer suicide bomber does in that instance which justifies the permutation, which is also our cone evidence of the critique. Their link evidence is terrible, doesn't talk about embodied experience being bad, which means that there's no specific link to the 1AC. If you don't have a clear link argument of the 1AC, the vote affect shapes on 1AR responses, and he said you wouldn't be able to explain the argument back in the cross-apply. The 1AC deprivated or negament evidence violence is relative to CC to what you want in liberal California, but not rural Georgia. Use of guns prevents people from becoming it because guns construct a national identity rooted in the liberal soft ideas people are constantly afraid, and they can't just say, fuck it, I'll be a suicide bomber. Link turn and means that there's no solvency. Also, the alt reifies anti-queer violence as an explanation for everything, which makes it analytically meaningless. Richie 15 Poir's arguments offer serious flaws in elevating homo nationalism as a narrative. Critics have removed the concrete context and released it in navity signifiers. Homo nationalism severely limits capacity to shed light. Navity experiences lack of attention to particular sites where public authority is exercised translates into a fetishization. This is the totalizing logic. There are queers who cannot afford to deprivilege a human body as a distinct organic thing and is trained by overlapping structures and practices of power which are best critique by understanding circumstances of their emergence, and alt solves nothing. Identity is overdetermined by existing structures. Self-construction is a myth for black people because they are marked as criminal from above. So even if individual affirmation of queerness, so even individual affirmation doesn't solve the underlying structure of violence. That's the one you see Yancey and Gomet evidence. How was Trayvon supposed to become a queer suicide bomber, which is an independent decide the alternative permutation to both perm to the plan. We all know that the reason is double-minded. There's not sufficient to overcome the links in the first place. So the perm cells all residual links perm white people to throw our bodies on the line for people of color to be able to affirm themselves as queer by breaking down those totalizing structures. Even if you are a quote-unquote queer suicide bomber, you are still going to get shot in the street, which means that only the case solves that where the impact. Affective politics fails to spill out. Schwinschwa 12. The affective term is auto-packeting or remaining about in individual feelings and undermines the possibility of breaking out in collective action machine dimensions of affective selves and pride voice yet. Hopefully ensures affects significance of obscure and ambiguous lack of coherence, marks certain exhaustion, and recognition also persists that the purpose seems to we're now compounding the apathy that has characterized much of recent discourse on youth and political engagement. Openness to flux destroys the foundations for equality. Shorts a post-structuralist theories to the political struggle for what institutions are need to honor never has society. Of course, one if one is never had one which competitive compensation, but participation to be open society needs institutional guarantee, democratic rights, political movement struggle to continue structure, meanings about the rights to be guaranteed. Such arguments are inevitably granted, or whatever arguments that go beyond certain flux and different politics they can only be sustained by fluxes by history, world reality, social movements, contests, dominant narratives in the name of a stable alternative have their existence. The social movement that defines primary values has instability and flux, which means that we have also on our flux test the alternative. He will try to extend the role of the ballot to exclude all of our offensive arguments. All of the obviously the tangible conditions, good stuff that we did on case response to this, and just means that in comparing the critique of the case versus the alternative, the permutation versus the alternative, it should be a question of who best resolves material conditions of violence.
I'm sorry, I have 3 minutes.
You got what I didn't read, right?
What did you read? Sorry.
The metaphors back card and down. Yep, that card and down.
Cool. order is the critique, and then the case debate, starting on the advantage page, and then the framing page. The K is probably going to start with an overview. I'd flow wherever you really want.
Is the overview like page worthy?
No.
I'm sorry, repeat the order one more time for me.
K with an overview, then line by line, and then the advantage page, and the framing page. So, bless you.
Thank you.
So I'm not burning my neck 6 minutes straight.
Ow.
Okay, everyone ready?
Yep.
Despite the 1 year sounding good, it was not as technically proficient as I would hold Bennett to. He has conceded multiple reasons independently why we would solve all of his offense arguments on the case flow, which is going to be a reason to lose the debate now. On the question of the critique is an overview argument. Our argument is that ultimately, no matter how liberal you are, there's always a deviant you want to be. And this is a uniqueness question indicates no matter how the state form functions, no matter how liberal Bennett thinks he is, no matter how much he talks about black people, there's always going to be the queer black, the disabled black, the queer disabled black. All of these arguments will be excluded outside of deviancy. No matter how liberal your statehood gets, there's always going to be a rewriting of history. For example, Giroux is progressive for now, but in 100 years, you'll ask yourself, was Giroux really progressive? The argument is probably not. The argument is ultimately that you should affirm the idea of deviance, the queer suicide bomber. Our argument is a methodological analysis that is a good heuristic, just as all his state arguments are. He says the state is heuristic. We say the queer suicide bomber is a good heuristic for understanding the world, which means that it now takes out all of his Trayvon Martin arguments. Yes, it may be true that a specific incident was bad, but we think an understanding generalized form of violence is probably best. Now on the line by line. He said, link our specific conviction, you should vote affirmative and give him leeway on this question. 2, and our articulation is key. We need to be able to respond to the contestation of our arguments. Obviously, we are not going to spend a bunch of time contextualizing to the entire app because the 2 and R, the 1 and NC link evidence has specific arguments to the affirmative. Now, on the assuming evidence proper, the focus on embodied experiments ultimately produces liberal individuals. Our assuming evidence indicates the idea of structures of expression are not something that we can control. For example, culture. Culture ultimately exceeds our ability to control it. For example, do you think the founding fathers that ever thought America would be a place where I was in the middle of a debate term and talking about queer suicide bomber? Goddamn hell no! But ultimately, we were able to change that and flow culture through a different methodology. The idea that culture exceeds our attempt to control is exactly what the uniqueness claim that I'm assuming evidence indicates, which is linked to all of his arguments about being able to change anything. If I'm winning my assuming evidence, you should vote negative on presumption functionally because there is no obvious yeah, you cannot control culture, you cannot control gun culture, you have done nothing to explain the solvency mechanism of the affirmative, which means that we're probably ahead of this. But I'm assuming evidence also links directly to the idea of radical democracy, drawing into radical democracy that indicates we should have a kind of conduit space or space where we embody moral experience. For example, where we talk about discursive action of gun control, which is exactly what his framing argument of policy making or the flow indicates, is exactly what I'm assuming evidence critiques. Ultimately, there is no such thing as personal experience. There's only collective experience in the entirety of our framing right now on the evidence. Big concession, you're going to lose. Sorry to end your career. The liberalism subject formation is predicated on the imperative of upholding a peaceful order. Ultimately, exploiting all deviance. Our evidence is extremely specific. You can read it. It indicates that ultimately the lines of deviance which we compare everything either reflexively to the white human subject so it causes 2 impacts. Either we compare everything reflexively to the white human subject and assimilate it, or completely destroy it, because liberal subjectivity is based on an ideal signifier. It also indicates that forms of war, militarism, all those kinds of things are mobilized along lines of deviancy. Why are we killing brown people in the Middle East? Because they're deviant. Now on the line by line of his cross applications. He says DeBrander answered all of our arguments because he used guns to prevent people from being able to, because guns construct a national identity. Well, this not answer the question of why national identities are even constructed or how guns are formulated as deep. I'm assuming evidence specific to this question indicates the entire idea, and we control the direction of the way in which identity is actually formulated. Now, on the Richie 15, you say master narrative failed. Well, it only takes out the whole nationalism. It said the court is not specific to queer suicide bombing. It's really generic and probably not that good. It just says that poor idea of homonationalism is too over-encompassing. That's why we read Masumi as well, because it indicates that this is a Deleuzian theory, not a Poirian theory, which we just read an alternative on queer suicide bombing, and that doesn't even indict that. His court is awful now. He says that identities overdetermine the myth for black people. What are role of the ballot? Extension, we'll get to in a second. The methodology frame is good in this question. I already did above. Question methods analysis. This is the same thing we said. Using the state as a heuristic that I've already said above too. Trayvon violence was irrational. That's the entirety of our argument. Ultimately, there is no reason Joseph Zimmerman decided to follow him that night. But ultimately, the negative is a good way to understand the irrationality of violence. Now, on be skeptical of multiple permutations. The conditionality enables them to multiple different advocacy go before the 2 ARs make the 2 AR attacking a moving target because they can pick which one they want to go for. Probably reason to drop permutations. Now, all the permutations. It doesn't this all still linked to the idea of accountability. The permutation do both argument ultimately reifies political subjectivity, exactly the kind of argument we talk about where you can pick and choose when you want to do things. This is exactly a disad to the reason why the permutation doesn't solve now. The permutation do the all other instances use the state once it's sufficient to turn all their impacts. Our evidence, assuming evidence indicates the use of state is always going to cause violence. If it is truly a try or die or even risk of the affirmative, that means that the permutation do the all other instances would at least enact some form of violence now. And permutation says why people should throw the binding law. This is severance. The app condition advocacy was specific to function to an idea of breaking down gun culture. This is functionally a floating counterplan. You should not evaluate it. He says flux destroys equality. All of our arguments about why flux is key to equality have been answered above. This is just a restated claim that about all of his other arguments. Our evidence indicates there's a question of equality for whom, which are conviviality evidence, which you can extend here is conceded. It indicates the displacing of subjectivity creates states of deviancy that are allowed to convert together when we come together for understanding that. For example, Shanika Shakur, when he was in prison and realized that the Crip Nation could be a kind of founding point for resistance, is exactly the kind of conviviality we talk about, which we actually like, answers all the material law arguments. Now in the rule of valid, he's conceded that you should vote for who methodologically gives a queer intelligibility. Fernando Evans indicates that the making of all things accountable destroys the ability for us to know things, because ultimately, when if everything is transparent, there's no hope for us to be able to evaluate things in a way that allows you to be mysterized. Our argument is that unintelligibility is necessary to not cause everyone to be numbers in a system where they're encoded. Now, on the case debate, we're going to start on my overview on the statehood debate. Again, another reason why you should not hack for Bennett. He has conceded the first argument that we offer an alternative to the state is inevitable or deviancy. Allah faces together of queerness. And second, our queer violence is irrational. In terms of all of your arguments, your answer to Stanley is god-awful. You just say that it's our competing evidence for Donahue evidence. We resolve the argument that does not resolve the question of Stanley's. It indicates ultimately queer violence is metaphysical because the way in which a stab wound for the queer is not a stab wound for just that queer, but all queer life is a question of the modalities of life itself and the forms of life that we try to get us completely conceded now on the abstraction debate. He just does a big overview without answering any of my arguments. He can see the second there's no link we control uniquest question in the world. It is abstract, not us. He said that the world is ultimately material, but there's no work for this claim. Our argument is that ultimately the idea of Trayvon Martin, the example he uses, is exactly the reason why it's not material. Third, the strategic abstraction is good. He has no reason why the neg specific use of abstraction is bad. Especially when it's a methodology. You should start the methodology framing and do not let the 2AR get up and do a dance, spin, hot and toot, and win.
Alright. There's some restroom back there, right?
like
You went to the bathroom. That'd be awkward when the entire room is waiting for you to go to the bathroom.
It's a lot of work.
What do you think? What do you study?
Don't.
Probably.
Capitals. That's a language.
What?
That's a language.
What do you study?
I'm not the one in the key.
What do you study then?
Social studies. It's like politics, philosophy, economics.
Because Harvard has like, what do they call them? They don't call them majors, right?
Concentrations. It's like
Concentrations.
most debaters do social studies.
I want to do anthropology, so yeah.
That's what I wanted to do in high school.
Yeah.
Com studies major now. It's awesome too.
Not too bad.
All I wanted to do philosophy, but I did a good job. So it's very fair.
The only question is, where the hell is Christian Quiroz?
He's probably
Find out stuff is
Christian, did you really go to the bathroom, man?
No, I did not. I walked there, and I was like, you know what? I'm probably holding up the round, so I'm gonna come back. I did that.
So it
enough.
took you that long to walk
Yeah, because
there
I got to
and
the
walk
pool, and I was like, you know what? I should just go back.
Alright, case, the advantage framework, the term, well, like, the K page will be sort of weird. It will be like all the permutation, but it will include parts of the other arguments. It might be easiest to just roll it top down and match everything up.
That's how I do it anyway.
Alright,
Starting where?
the advantage.
Yeah.
Is everybody good idea? Or is everybody good?
What did you say?
I said, is everybody a good idea?
I don't know, it's like
on the
Yeah,
document. Alright, is everybody good?
The F is a good idea. The alt may be too, but they've conceded specific instances of violence. The alt has nothing. Our training on example proves, which justifies the permutation. Gun violence is disproportionately occurs to black people and handgun bans stop that because people no longer have guns to kill each other, and we reject the universal objective needs that guns create, which is our common evidence. And Donahue evidence. Your must-me card isn't about culture. It doesn't say that we can't shift it, and we have empirical evidence that says it does result in a cultural shift, which issues are heavily after this issue. Also, it's obviously just a new self-esteem in the 2 and R. You say that the overkill argument is irrational violence doesn't matter. We still have one that we resolve. There's still material conditions violence. It still relies on you winning the critique. The framework page. You conceded the advocacy skills. This add to your interpretation. Our heuristic is good. You say that you provide a competing heuristic, but that doesn't link to our advocacy skills. Offensive use McClure indicates that policy discussion is key to understand gun control specifically, which the alternative is not talking about, which justify the permutation. And is a reason that our method is independently good, which you fundamentally not contested, even if you have a good overarching structure of how oppression occurs. We have wanted that we are key to resist spill over to solve advocacy in the real world, which is the reason that discussions of gun control are good, and framing our discussion in that context is uniquely important, which also justifies your permutation, especially in the context of the one you see common evidence, which is conceded in 2 speeches. The materialism debate. You say that strategic abstraction is good and you control uniqueness. You concede our past evidence that says that yes, sometimes abstraction is good, but it is only good if it is used to resolve material conditions of violence in both specific and holistic instances, which is again the thesis of our permutation argument. Yes, you have a good overarching structure claim, but you do not have a way to resolve specific instances of violence, which is what the plan does, which means that we still get access to all of our arguments. You've also conceded our cross application of the code evidence that your metaphysical ontology arguments or whatever do not do anything because real problem is things like holistic militarization, which in case solves the critique.
Starting on this like perms bad argument. Stupid. Okay.
No, it's not app conditionalities. Key test vague alternatives like this one where it doesn't mean anything until 2 and R, especially given that you say things like you get new 2 and R applications of the link, which means that we should get multiple permutations, test those new applications. Also, no impact. You get a long 2 and R times you saw it, times you checks it back now. The permutation debate, we will go for both the all other instances permutation and the white people should put their bodies on the line. One all other instances does solve. You say the state leads to some violence. However, arguments that we are key to resolve specific instances of violence, which you have conceded that blackness is an overarching structure, which is our evidence about Trayvon. Even if used as a collective strategy is effective even if used as a collective strategy is effective to resolve material instances of violence arguments, that in specific instances the alt does nothing, which is also what our homo-nationalism bad evidence is really, really good on. It says that even if this is a good heuristic, it is still bad because queer people cannot disidentify once they reach, or cannot get out of the material conditions that they find themselves in, which means that you've not won a clear disadvantage to the permutation or reason that severs. You say that the F is about gun culture, however, that still means that white people are putting their rights on the line so that black people have the opportunity to become so they're not literally killed in the streets, which means that we resolve 100% of your offense. You've also conceded our flux bad argument. It says that social movements cannot actually have any clear stasis point in flux because any clear stasis point in flux. You say there's one instance where it does. Argument is that even in those social movements, you will still go back on the street and get shot, which only the aff solves.
Can we clear the room if anyone's going to talk while the judges are deciding?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Por favor.